Every day begins the same way. The sun rises. Time starts moving. The clock doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't pause because you're overwhelmed. And it doesn't wait until you're motivated. It just moves. Hour after hour. Minute after minute. Whether you're ready or not, the day begins. And you have a choice. Every single morning, you either take control of it or it takes control of you. It sounds simple, but it's everything. Because that one decision, it sets the tone. It defines your momentum. It becomes the rhythm that your entire life starts dancing to. If you take ownership of the day, if you wake up and move with intention, you build direction, you create structure, you lead your energy. But if you wait for the day to tell you what to do, if you let the chaos come to you before you're ready, if you stay in reaction mode, you lose. Not because you didn't try, not because you didn't want to succeed, but because you gave the wheel to something else. The distractions, the demands, the random emotions, the people who don't care about your purpose. You handed over the driver's seat to anyone and anything willing to take it. And when that happens, your day owns you. It decides where you go, what you focus on, how you feel, what gets built and what doesn't. You either run the day or the day runs you. That's not just a cute phrase. That's law. That's how momentum works. And the people who win, the people who lead, the people who move their lives forward, they aren't more talented. They're not more gifted. They just decided they're not going to be passengers in their own life anymore. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait until someone tells them what to do. They move. They decide. They choose. They build rhythm and rituals that create energy, that create results, that create power. And the moment their eyes open in the morning, they shift into movement. Not frantic movement, not desperate busyness. Aligned movement, movement with purpose, movement with clarity. Because it's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's not about filling every hour with noise. It's about cutting the distractions and making room for focus, making room for real decisions, making room for what will actually move your life forward. Because if you don't decide what those things are, something else will. And whatever fills that space will not be built for your growth. The world will offer you thousands of ways to stay busy, thousands of ways to stay reactive. And if you don't stop and choose, you'll fall into every one of them. You'll spend the entire day responding instead of creating. You'll spend your energy putting out fires that never mattered in the first place. You'll end the day exhausted, not because you did too much, but because you did the wrong things. And if you repeat that enough times, it becomes your life. A string of days that you didn't lead. A schedule that you didn't design. A mind that you didn't direct. And the scary thing, you might not even notice it happening. Because when the day runs you, it rarely feels like chaos. It feels like routine. It feels normal. Until one day, you look up and you're tired. You're burned out. You're unfulfilled. And you don't even remember how you got here. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can shift. And it can shift fast. Because the moment you decide that the day does not own you, that your energy, your focus, your rhythm, your decisions belong to you, that's the moment your life starts moving differently. You start seeing clearly. You start cutting the noise. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You stop letting urgency trick you into thinking it's important. And you start doing the things that actually matter. Not someday. Not when it's convenient, but now. Because now is all you've got. You don't build a powerful life by occasionally having a productive afternoon. You build it by waking up every single day and saying, I lead, I choose, I run this. and then proving it, not with noise, but with decisions, not with hype, but with structure, not with good intentions, but with real discipline. If you want to run the day, the first thing you need to master is how it begins. Because how you start determines how you show up. It sets the trajectory. It doesn't just shape the first hour. It echoes through all the rest. The morning is the foundation. And if the foundation is weak, the rest of the day becomes about catching up, about damage control, about reacting instead of leading. Most people start their day by waking up into reaction. They reach for the alarm, hit snooze, roll over, and the first conversation they have is with comfort. The first decision they make is to delay movement. And that one decision seems small, but it plants a message in your mind that says, today, comfort is in charge. Not momentum, not intention, not purpose, comfort. Then they finally get up, late, rushed, already behind. The morning becomes a blur. They don't lead their thoughts. They don't direct their energy. They move into the world already exhausted, already frustrated, already giving their power away to the clock, to the chaos, to whatever comes next. And the world will keep throwing things at you. Messages, demands, requests, noise. If you start the day without armor, without clarity, without rhythm, those things will own you. You'll move through the day on autopilot, chasing the next task, putting out the next fire, spinning in circles. But when you own the first hour, you start different. You show up different. You wake up, and before the world touches you, you touch your vision. You connect to something higher, something clear, something rooted. You don't ask what the world needs from you. You ask who you want to be today, and you move from that place. This is where power lives, not in speed, not in doing 1,000 things, but in doing the right things, the few things that matter most. And those things are easiest to do when you start the day with structure, with stillness, with presence, not noise, not panic, not distraction. So you build your morning like it matters. You design it. You protect it. You turn it into something sacred, not for the sake of routine, but for the sake of ownership. Because when you own your morning, you tell your brain, I'm in charge. And that energy carries. It stays with you. You don't need some perfect 2-hour ritual. You don't need to mimic what everyone else is doing. You just need a system that's yours. Something simple, something real, something that tells your body, your mind, your spirit, we lead. We move. We do not wait for the day to dictate our direction. We choose it. Maybe that means you get up before the world has a chance to speak into your mind. Maybe it means movement, stillness, writing, reading, reflection, breathing, whatever sharpens you, whatever connects you to clarity. The content doesn't matter as much as the commitment, the consistency, the discipline to show up for yourself before you show up for anything else. And that discipline isn't just about productivity. It's about dignity. It's about saying, before I give myself away, I return to myself. Before you answer the world, you answer to your values, your mission, your identity. It's not selfish. It's leadership. Because when you start the day rooted, the rest of the day gets easier. Decisions get clearer. Distractions lose their power. You stop chasing clarity. You already have it. You stop spinning your wheels. You're already in motion. And it doesn't take a huge shift. It takes intention. That's it. One decision to wake up with purpose instead of panic. One choice to start from alignment instead of urgency. One moment in the morning where you say, today doesn't run me. I run it. And then you act like it. That decision, repeated every day, becomes a pattern. And patterns shape identity. Suddenly, you're not someone who tries to stay focused. You're someone who is focused. You're not someone who wishes they had more time. You're someone who makes time. You're not someone who reacts to the day. You direct it. This is how momentum is built. Not in big leaps, not in random bursts, in small acts of ownership, repeated, refined, lived. You stop waiting for the perfect morning and start building the best one you can. And once you do that, once the morning becomes yours, the rest of the day starts rising to meet your new standard. You can own your morning and still lose your day if you don't understand one thing. Attention is your most valuable resource. Not your time, not your money, not even your energy. Attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your energy follows, your action follows, your life follows. And if you're not fiercely protecting that, you're giving away your direction, one distraction at a time. Most people don't even realize they're leaking it. Their day is one long blur, one long chain of interruptions, one endless loop of jumping from one thing to the next, never really being anywhere. They start something, and 5 minutes later, they're somewhere else. They open their day with a goal, and by noon, they're buried in someone else's agenda. This is not about working harder. This is not about being some productivity machine that never blinks. This is about ownership, about recognizing that your mind is not built to be in 12 places at once. That multitasking is not a badge of honor. It's a recipe for burnout. That your life is a direct reflection of where your focus lives. You don't rise by doing more things. You rise by doing the right things and doing them deeply, fully, presently. That level of focus, it's not natural anymore. The world has trained you to scatter, to jump, to react. But focus can be rebuilt. It can be trained. And it starts with intention. Every morning before the chaos starts, you choose your aim. Not 25 things, not everything on your list. The essentials, the few things that move the needle, the few things that build your momentum, the few things that, if done, would make today powerful, no matter what else happens. You write them down, you name them. You don't keep them vague. You don't let your day be a guessing game. You say, this is what I'm building today. This is what gets my attention. And everything else, it waits. It moves around those things, not the other way around. Then, you protect the time to do those things like your life depends on it, because it does, not in a dramatic way, in a very real way. Because if you don't do what matters, someone else's priorities will swallow yours whole. You turn off the noise. You close the tabs. You put your phone in another room if you have to. You stop giving a dozen shallow yeses, and you give a deep, focused yes to what matters most. That's how you win back control. Not by doing more, but by being where you are. That presence, that's where your best work lives. That's where your clarity sharpens. That's where your problem solving gets creative. That's where your insight deepens. You do not find flow by accident. You find it through rhythm, through simplicity, through boundaries. And yes, it requires discipline. It requires saying no. It requires getting comfortable with not responding immediately to every request, every notification, every urgent message. But the more you do that, the more you train the people around you that your attention is sacred, that your time is yours. And here's what's wild. When you protect your attention, everything else gets easier. Decisions become clearer. Your energy lasts longer. Your creativity expands because your mind isn't fragmented anymore. It's not constantly resetting. It's not living in 100 open loops. You don't need to be on all day. You just need to be all in when it counts. You don't need 12 hours of hustle. You need a few sacred windows of deep work, undistracted, unbroken, completely yours. That level of focus repeated daily is where breakthroughs come from. And don't confuse busy with focused. They're not the same. Busy is reaction. Focus is intention. Busy is movement. Focus is momentum. Busy burns you out. Focus builds you up. One leaves you exhausted. The other leaves you fulfilled. So stop celebrating busyness. Stop treating chaos like it means you're doing something important. Start measuring your days not by how much you did, but by how aligned your effort was. Did you move the right things forward? Did you build what matters? Did you lead your day, or did your attention get hijacked? You get to decide every single hour. You can reset anytime. You can pause, breathe, ask, is this where I want to be right now? And if it's not, you redirect without guilt, without shame, just awareness, just leadership. Because leadership is not just for others. It starts with how you lead yourself. It starts with how you treat your focus, with how you treat your time, with how you treat your energy. That's the first level of power. And if you skip that, you'll always be chasing results without building the foundation to sustain them. Once you've taken control of your mornings and started owning your attention, the next challenge is consistency. Because without consistency, nothing sticks. Progress becomes a guessing game. Habits never solidify. Confidence never compounds. And the frustrating thing, you can work incredibly hard for a few days or a few weeks, but if it's not consistent, it doesn't build a foundation. Consistency isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's not about being a robot. It's about doing the right things day after day, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because that's the moment where identity is being built. Anyone can take action when it's easy, when it's exciting, when motivation is high. But the people who win in life, the ones who make long-term impact, they act even when no one is clapping, even when the result hasn't shown up yet, even when they're tired, even when they'd rather take the day off. Because they've learned this truth. Consistency isn't about how you feel. It's about what you've decided. And when the decision is real, the action becomes automatic. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop negotiating with comfort. You stop letting emotion decide your effort. And here's the paradox. Consistency is hard at first, but it makes everything else easier. You no longer waste energy wondering what to do. You don't need to wrestle with your schedule. You don't rely on inspiration. You just show up. And that act of showing up becomes a part of you. It becomes normal. But this isn't about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about building systems that support your standard, that make it easier to show up, that reduce friction, that create rhythm. Because discipline shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel like alignment, like you're honoring your goals, like you're keeping your word. And that means keeping your word to yourself, not just to others. Because the most damaging thing isn't breaking a promise to someone else. It's breaking a promise to you. Every time you say you're going to do something and don't, your self-trust erodes. Your confidence takes a hit. Your brain starts to believe that your words don't mean much. But every time you follow through, even on something small, you're casting a vote for a new identity. You're telling your nervous system, this is who we are now. And the more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. Until eventually it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like who you are. So don't underestimate the small things. The 5 minutes of focused effort, the one push-up, the single decision to eat something healthy, the extra call, the saved dollar, the stretch, the prayer, the journal entry. These are not small. They're proof that you are becoming. And consistency doesn't mean rigidity. Life will throw curveballs. You'll miss a day. You'll make a mistake. That doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean you start over. It just means you recommit. You come back, you reset, without shame, without guilt. Because the standard isn't perfection. It's return. It's resilience. It's the ability to get off track and then get back on fast. To not let a slip become a spiral. To not let a setback become a story. To say, that's not who I am anymore, and then act like it. This is where momentum lives. Not in intensity, not in random bursts, but in rhythm. And the rhythm comes from one thing: showing up every day in some way. Not just when it's fun, not just when it's comfortable, but when it's needed. And here's the beautiful part. When you live with that kind of consistency, you stop needing motivation. You stop looking for inspiration. Because you're not acting based on how you feel. You're acting based on who you've decided to become. And that kind of identity, it's unshakable. It doesn't rise and fall with external results. It doesn't depend on external validation. It holds firm through the ups and downs, through the wins and losses, because it's built on discipline. It's built on habits. It's built on truth. So you keep stacking those days, one after another. You stop measuring by speed and start measuring by depth, by alignment, by how closely your actions reflect your values. And you trust the process because the results will come. Not always on your timeline, but always on time. The only thing that can stop them is if you stop. So don't stop. Even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when no one notices. Keep showing up. Keep proving to yourself that you can be trusted, that your word means something, that your future matters enough to fight for it today. If consistency is the engine that keeps you moving, then clarity is the map that keeps you from getting lost. Because you can be incredibly consistent and still go in the wrong direction. You can wake up early, do the work, show up, and execute, and still find yourself unfulfilled, exhausted, and wondering why your effort isn't producing the life you want. That's what happens when you don't have clarity. You confuse motion with meaning. You confuse movement with progress. And you build something that might look good on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. Because you didn't define the destination. You didn't decide what you're actually aiming for. Most people spend more time planning a vacation than they do designing their life. They let life hand them a schedule. They let other people's expectations decide their priorities. And then they wonder why they feel like they're constantly climbing, but never arriving. Clarity changes that. Clarity is power. It simplifies everything. It removes the noise. it brings everything into focus. Not just what you want, but why you want it. Who you want to become in the process. What you're willing to do to get there, and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. And you don't find clarity by accident. You create it through reflection, through questions, through stillness. You have to sit with yourself and ask the hard stuff. Not, what do other people expect from me? But, what do I expect from myself? Not, what should I be doing? But, what must I be doing to become who I was built to be? And that means stripping away the noise, getting quiet, listening. Not to the pressure of the world, but to the pull of your own purpose. Because your purpose will whisper. It won't always shout. It won't always compete with the volume of your distractions. But it's there. And when you find it, when you align with it, everything changes. You stop chasing goals that don't mean anything to you. You stop grinding for the approval of people who don't matter. You stop living according to scripts you didn't write. You start building a life that reflects who you actually are and who you're becoming. And clarity doesn't mean you have every step figured out. It just means you know the direction. You know the outcome. You know the standard. You know the feeling you're chasing. And you know when you're out of alignment. That's all you need. Because with clarity, decision-making gets easier. You stop overthinking. You stop hesitating. You stop getting stuck in analysis paralysis. You ask, does this move me closer to who I want to be? If the answer is yes, you move. If the answer is no, you let it go. Without guilt, without apology, without needing to justify yourself to people who don't understand your path. Because clarity creates conviction, and conviction creates freedom. The freedom to act, to decide, to build. You no longer need everyone else to agree. You no longer need reassurance every step of the way. You no longer need constant encouragement just to keep going, because you're not building from doubt anymore. You're building from decision. And that decision, the one to live with clarity, requires courage, because clarity creates pressure. It removes the option of pretending. Once you know what you want, you can no longer hide behind the excuse of, I'm not sure. Once you've named the vision, you have to confront whether your current life matches it or not. But that pressure, it's a gift, because it forces you to align. It forces you to rise. It forces you to stop settling. It doesn't always feel good, but it is good, because it's real. And real growth only happens in the presence of real truth. So you write the vision, you speak the standard, you define the path, not because you know how it will all unfold, but because your life deserves direction. Your time deserves intention. Your energy deserves precision. And the more you live with clarity, the more powerful you become. Not louder, not busier, just more focused, more grounded, more effective. You no longer waste energy trying to be everything to everyone. You just become exactly who you were created to be. And when that happens, people will notice. Not because you're chasing them, but because you're no longer chasing anything. You're just moving with purpose, with rhythm, with certainty. And that certainty becomes contagious. You stop needing to control everything. You stop needing guarantees, because you're not anchored to outcomes. You're anchored to alignment. And alignment is stronger than results, because results come and go, but alignment is forever. So when the day begins, you don't ask, what do I feel like doing? You ask, what matters most today? You don't ask, what's easiest? You ask, what's right? You don't ask, what's urgent? You ask, what's essential? And then you act with clarity, with consistency, with power. Because once you know what you're building, once you know who you're becoming, the day no longer runs you. You run it. Clarity shows you the path. Consistency walks it. But what keeps you on that path when life gets heavy, when things get hard, uncertain, unpredictable, is your emotional discipline. Because the truth is, no matter how much clarity you have, no matter how dialed in your systems are, there will be days when you don't feel like showing up, when the plan falls apart, when people disappoint you, when momentum fades. And this is the part most people never talk about. The emotional weight of leadership, of self-leadership, of taking responsibility for your time, your energy, your attitude, your reactions. It's easy to run the day when everything's going your way. But how do you lead when you're tired? How do you stay grounded when stress is high? How do you keep moving when your emotions are pulling you in every direction but forward? That's where emotional discipline comes in. The ability to feel without folding, to experience emotion without being ruled by it, to honor your feelings but not give them the wheel, because your emotions are not the enemy, but they're not the boss either. You are not your mood. You are not your impulses. You are not the anxious thought that just hit your mind. You are the one who decides what to do with all of it. And if you don't lead your emotions will lead your day. And often straight into chaos. This is where self-awareness matters. The ability to step back in real time and say, this is frustration, not truth. This is fear, not a fact. This is doubt, not direction. You can feel it, you can acknowledge it, but you don't obey it. Because obedience to emotion is how most people lose the day. They let a moment of anger ruin a conversation. They let a wave of self-doubt shut down an opportunity. They let the weight of overwhelm keep them from starting anything. They feel something and assume it must be true. But feelings are not always facts. You need to learn how to pause, how to breathe, how to respond instead of react. That one skill alone, pausing, can save entire relationships. It can protect your energy. It can keep you from making impulsive decisions that don't reflect who you really are. And this is not about suppressing emotion. It's about processing it, owning it, creating space for it without letting it hijack your day. Because the more you can feel without being controlled, the more powerful you become. When you develop emotional discipline, you stop spiraling. You stop creating drama where it's not needed. You stop exhausting yourself with mental overreactions to things that don't require your full emotional bandwidth. You save that bandwidth for what matters. That's the real advantage of self-leadership. It's not just in your calendar or your habits. It's in your emotional regulation, in your ability to stay calm under pressure, in your ability to bring your best self into rooms, even when everything outside that room is uncertain. And the way you train that discipline isn't complicated. It's in the reps. It's in the moments when you want to snap, and instead you breathe. When you want to quit, and instead you recommit. When you feel like shrinking, and instead you step forward. Over time, you begin to trust yourself. You know you can handle stress. You know you can manage overwhelm. You know you can move, even when the emotion says pause. And that trust, that's the foundation for resilience. Because life will test you, not once, not twice, but constantly. And the question is never, will things get hard. The question is, who will you be when they do? Will you let the day run you? Or will you ground yourself, take a breath, and lead through it? This is what separates the great from the good, the people who build and the people who drift. Because everyone can be consistent when life is smooth. But when it gets hard, when pressure rises, do you stick to your standard? Or do you let the emotion of the moment lower it? And the only way to stick to your standard is to prepare for those emotional moments before they come. To train yourself to recognize them. To rehearse how you'll respond. Not react, but respond. Because response is a choice. Reaction is automatic. You don't need to be cold. You don't need to be robotic. You just need to stay grounded, to stay aware, to stay in control of how you show up. Because how you show up determines what gets built and what gets broken. So build the emotional muscle, build the pause, build the awareness. You don't have to suppress how you feel. You just have to own how you act. And when that becomes your pattern, you're not just running the day, you're leading yourself through it. If you've mastered your mornings, guarded your attention, built consistency, sharpened your clarity, and grounded your emotional discipline, then you're no longer reacting to life. You're shaping it. But now comes the question most people never pause to ask. What are you shaping it into? Because running the day isn't just about efficiency, it's about direction. And if you don't know what you're actually building, you might become incredibly effective at creating something you don't even want. That's the danger of unexamined ambition. You push, you grind, you fill every hour with something productive, but never stop to ask, is this the life I actually want to live? You reach for success, but it's success defined by someone else. You hit goals, but they don't fulfill you. You build a schedule so tight, there's no room for reflection, no room for peace, no room for presence. And if you're not careful, you'll trade alignment for achievement. You'll build a life that looks impressive, but feels empty. You'll wake up one day having done everything right, but feeling like something's wrong. Not because you failed, but because you never defined success for yourself. So pause. Ask the question, what does success mean to me? Not what's trending, not what your friends are doing, not what your parents told you to want. What do you want your life to feel like? What do you want your days to be made of? What would a great life look like? Not from the outside, but from the inside. Start there. Define it clearly. Write it down. Paint the picture. Because if you don't define your version of a great life, you'll spend your days building someone else's. And if you run the day with no vision, your momentum won't lead to mastery. It'll lead to burnout. True productivity is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's about alignment, about pruning what doesn't fit, about saying no, not because you're lazy, but because you're focused, because you've chosen a direction and you're not available for everything anymore. This level of ownership requires courage. It means turning down good opportunities to protect the great ones. It means disappointing some people to honor yourself. It means slowing down long enough to ask, is this still aligned? And if the answer is no, it means having the strength to pivot. That's the secret to a powerful day. Not just pushing harder, but pausing with purpose, reflecting, resetting, realigning. Because you can't afford to stay on autopilot, even if the system is working. even if the habits are strong, even if the calendar is full, because your life is not just a checklist. It's a reflection of your values, your choices, your truth. So build space for evaluation, weekly, monthly. Quiet moments to ask, am I still in love with what I'm building? Do I still feel connected to the purpose behind this plan? Is my daily rhythm taking me where I want to go, or just keeping me busy? When you live this way, you shift from force to flow. You stop white-knuckling every outcome. You stop trying to control every variable. You start trusting your process, not blindly, but because you've made it yours. You designed it. You refined it. You chose it. That trust brings peace, not passivity, not laziness, but grounded momentum, the kind that doesn't panic when something breaks, the kind that doesn't unravel when a plan changes, because you're not running the day to prove something. You're running it to live something. And what you're living, what you're becoming, is more important than what you're checking off. That's the difference between a life that feels full and a life that just looks full. And once you taste that fullness, you'll never want to go back. You'll never settle for shallow goals again. You'll never confuse noise for purpose again. Because now you're not just executing tasks, you're expressing values. You're not just being productive, you're being intentional. And that intention becomes magnetic. People feel it. Your energy becomes clear. Your presence becomes more grounded. You become more effective. Not just because of what you do, but because of how you do it. And this is when the day really begins to obey you. Not because you control every detail, but because you've aligned your actions with your essence. You've stopped reacting to the world and started building your world. And now the world responds. It gives you more of what matches your focus. It presents people and opportunities that match your frequency. It starts working for you, not by magic, but by alignment. Because you've stopped rushing and you've started refining. You've stopped hustling and you've started harmonizing. This is where your rhythm gets real, where your movement becomes sustainable, where your success stops feeling accidental and starts feeling inevitable. Because it's not based on randomness. It's rooted in who you are. And that kind of rhythm, it lasts. You've built rhythm. You've trained discipline. You've created alignment. And now you've arrived at the highest level of running the day, not just managing your time or executing on tasks, but becoming someone who multiplies impact. Someone who doesn't just lead themselves, but shifts the energy of everyone around them. Someone whose structure becomes so strong, whose presence becomes so anchored that it gives other people permission to rise. Because when you truly run your day, it's not just about what gets done. It's about who you are while doing it. It's about your tone, your attitude, your energy. It's about your emotional intelligence in the middle of pressure. It's about your ability to stay calm in the chaos, to respond instead of react, to stay solution-oriented when everything around you is spiraling. This is leadership, not in title, not in position, but in action, in who you become. Because the way you show up consistently, intentionally, with integrity, teaches everyone around you what's possible. Your presence becomes a mirror. Your standard becomes contagious. Your decisions raise the temperature in every room you walk into. And that starts with how you treat every hour, every transition, every conversation. It's in how you walk into meetings, how you sit down to work, how you shift from one role to another throughout the day. Not mechanically, but consciously. You no longer drift between roles. You bring presence into each one. Because you've learned how to pause, how to reset, how to create intentional boundaries between the chapters of your day. So you don't carry the frustration from one space into the next. So you don't bring stress from one meeting into the next task. So you don't let one low moment define an entire afternoon. And that ability to reset quickly, to regulate emotionally, to protect the integrity of your momentum is what sets you apart. You become the person people rely on, the one who doesn't crack under pressure, the one who can be trusted with weight, the one who doesn't just execute, but elevates. And none of that happens by accident. It's the result of thousands of unseen decisions. The moments where you chose discipline over comfort, intention over distraction, alignment over approval. Those private victories create public presence. They create internal credibility, where you know without a doubt that you're becoming someone solid. And with that credibility, something powerful happens. You stop hiding. You stop playing small. You stop waiting to be noticed. And you start making moves because they're right, not because they're applauded. You no longer need praise to validate your process. You validate it by the way you live. You become the kind of person who doesn't need external permission to lead. You lead by example, by conviction, by clarity. And people will feel that shift. They'll start asking what you're doing differently. They'll start wondering why your energy hits different, why your pace feels peaceful, why your presence feels calm but strong. And it's not because you're doing more. It's because you've stopped leaking power. You've stopped negotiating with chaos. You've stopped outsourcing your schedule, your energy, and your focus to things that don't matter. You've stopped waiting for life to slow down. You decided to slow down internally, to move with purpose, to eliminate the noise, to lead from alignment. And the final evolution, you realize it's not just about what you get done, but about what you build that lasts. Systems that scale, habits that hold, relationships that deepen. A mind that doesn't just react to the world, but shapes it. You're no longer fighting time. You're designing it. You're no longer trying to escape stress. You've learned how to lead through it. You're no longer hoping the day treats you well. You're showing up to command your hours with presence and power. And from that place, your life begins to expand. Your ceiling becomes your floor. Your best days stop being random. They become normal. You start executing at levels most people only fantasize about. Not because you're superhuman, but because you've done the work. You've earned your rhythm. You've refined your edge. So now you don't just run the day, you lead it. You shape it. You multiply it. And in doing so, you build a life that runs with you, not against you. A life that reflects the strength of your identity, the depth of your habits, and the clarity of your values. And that's the difference between average and exceptional. It's not intensity, it's rhythm. It's not more hours, it's more alignment. It's not control, it's leadership. The kind that starts in the first minute of the morning and echoes into every moment after. You are no longer someone who hopes the day goes well. You are someone who takes the lead. And when you do that, consistently, deliberately, without apology, you stop chasing greatness. You start living it. You've heard the phrase 1,000 times. Either you run the day or the day runs you. And now you know what it really means. It's not just a motivational soundbite. It's a decision, a moment-to-moment commitment, a standard that says, I don't hand over my time. I don't surrender my focus. I don't let randomness shape the story of my life. Because this is your life. This is your one shot. And time doesn't slow down for hesitation. It doesn't pause for procrastination. It doesn't adjust itself to your excuses. It just moves, which means you have to move with it, not reactively, but intentionally. You don't get to control everything. The world will still throw things at you. Circumstances will still change. People will still disappoint you. Pressure will still come. But you always get to choose who you are in the middle of it. How you think, how you respond, how you lead. And when that becomes your focus, not controlling the day, but leading yourself through the day, everything changes. You stop panicking. You stop spinning. You stop losing hours to distraction and emotion because you've done the work. You've laid the foundation. You've trained the standard. You are no longer available for chaos. You are no longer willing to live in reaction. You are no longer interested in simply surviving your schedule. You are here to lead, to show up, to execute with clarity, to live from your values, not your moods, from your purpose, not your fear. And that doesn't mean you'll be perfect. You will fall off. You will slip. But the difference now is that you come back faster. You reset quicker. You no longer spiral. You recalibrate. You take the wheel again. Every time, because that's who you are now. The person who runs the day is not flawless. They're focused, not superhuman, but structured. Not always certain, but always committed. They know what matters, and they refuse to get pulled into what doesn't. You've built that identity now. You've earned it. Through the early mornings, through the difficult decisions, through the hard conversations with yourself, through the moments where no one was watching, but you showed up anyway. And now you move different. You wake up with intention. You protect your attention. You execute your essentials. You lead your emotions. You check in with your vision. You act like your future depends on it, because it does. And when you string enough of those days together, days that you led, not just survived, something happens. Your identity elevates. Your environment starts shifting. Your energy compounds, and your future stops feeling like a question mark. It starts feeling like something you're actively building. Because you are. With every hour you protect, with every standard you enforce, with every boundary you honor, with every commitment you keep. You are no longer reacting to life. You are designing it. You are driving it. You are living it on purpose. So don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for things to slow down. They won't. Lead anyway. Show up anyway. Run the day anyway. And if today wasn't your best, that's fine. The next moment is always open for leadership. Take the wheel. Own the hours. Build the rhythm. Live the standard. Because your life is not defined by what you hope to do. It's defined by what you repeatedly did. And now you've decided you are the one who runs the day.